I never imagined my quiet neighborhood would turn into a battleground over my cat. Yes, my cat. The laziest, fluffiest little creature you could ever meet. His name is Muffin, and his idea of excitement is chasing dust motes in a sunbeam. But the morning I opened my front door and saw a white animal control truck parked in my driveway, two uniformed officers standing stiffly with clipboards in hand, everything changed. "Are you the owner of a grey tabby named Muffin?" one of them asked, in that firm, official tone. I blinked, confused. Uh, yes? Why? The officer cleared his throat. "We've received multiple complaints from your homeowners association. Specifically, from a resident named Karen." And there she was, standing at the edge of my lawn, HOA papers clutched in her manicured hand like they were a police badge, lips curled into the smirk of someone who thought she'd already won. "She's lying," I blurted before they even said more. What could Muffin possibly have done? Karen adjusted her sunglasses dramatically, pointing across the yard. "Your cat is dangerous. He scratches cars, he frightens children, he roams freely and attacks people's dogs. He's a menace to this neighborhood." A menace? Muffin, the same cat who hid from butterflies and freaked out when the toaster popped? I almost laughed. Almost. But the look on those officers' faces told me this wasn't a joke. They were here because she had power, because she had reported me through the HOA system, filing complaints again and again until they had no choice but to take action. And suddenly, the laughter I'd been holding back turned into a cold, sinking anger. The first warning signs. If I was being honest, I should have seen this coming. Karen had been after me for weeks. It started with friendly notes taped to my door. "Please keep your cat indoors. HOA guidelines require it. Your cat is damaging neighborhood property. If this continues, fines will be issued." At first, I brushed it off. My security cameras showed Muffin never left the backyard. He was terrified of the sidewalk. There was no way he was scratching cars or destroying flower beds. But Karen didn't care about evidence. She cared about control. Neighbors warned me about her. Don't cross Karen. She once tried to fine a guy $500 for leaving his trash cans out for one extra day. She reported a family for having too many wind chimes. She even measured someone's lawn with a ruler. And now she had chosen me as her next target. Why? Maybe because I didn't kiss up to her at HOA meetings. Maybe because she didn't like seeing Muffin sitting in the window ignoring her. Or maybe because Karen just needed someone new to bully. The day everything exploded. So when I opened the door that morning, saw animal control officers staring me down, while Karen lurked behind them like a director watching her play unfold, I knew this wasn't a random complaint. This was a setup. "Sir," the officer continued, "if your cat is found to be roaming or causing property damage, we'll have to take action. That could include fines or removal." The word removal hit me like a punch to the chest. My cat? Taken away? Because one bitter neighbor wanted to prove she was queen of the block? Karen crossed her arms and added, "Frankly, this neighborhood isn't safe with animals like his cat running loose. We deserve peace of mind. I'm just trying to protect the community. Protect the community." The words were so fake, dripping with self-importance, I almost lost it right there. But I held my tongue. Instead, I said carefully, "You're making a huge mistake. Muffin doesn't even leave my yard. I have proof." The officers exchanged a look. One scribbled something on his clipboard. Karen smirked wider as if she could already see Muffin being carried away in a cage. That smirk burned itself into my mind. It wasn't just about my cat. It was about power, control, and humiliation. Karen didn't want peace. She wanted submission. She wanted me to bow down, admit fault, and let her run the neighborhood like a dictator. But as I stood there, Muffin brushing against my leg, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him, I made a silent promise. She picked the wrong neighbor, and she has no idea what's coming. The officers finally said, "We'll have to inspect your property and verify the situation." Karen grinned. "Oh, please do. You'll see exactly what I mean." As they stepped past me into the yard, my fists clenched at my sides, because I knew something Karen didn't. Every inch of my property was covered by cameras. And if animal control really wanted evidence, well, I had plenty. This wasn't the beginning of Muffin's end. This was the beginning of Karen's downfall. I knew Karen was a problem long before animal control showed up at my door. The truth is, she had been circling me for weeks, like a hawk looking for prey. And every note, every confrontation, every smug glance from across the street had been leading to this moment. The first notes. It started simple. One evening, after getting home from work, I noticed a bright yellow sticky note on my front door. Reminder, HOA requires cats to be indoors at all times. I frowned, crumpled it up, and tossed it. Muffin was strictly an indoor cat. On rare days when he slipped onto the porch, he froze at the first sound of a car engine and sprinted back inside. The next day, another note appeared. Your cat was seen scratching a neighbor's car. Please address immediately, I laughed out loud. Muffin scratching a car? He barely had the courage to scratch his own scratching post. But when I checked the security footage, my jaw clenched. There was no cat, but there was Karen. She was standing in the cul-de-sac, pointing at cars, her phone raised as if she were documenting evidence. The neighborhood gossip. When I brought this up to a few neighbors, they shook their heads. "Yeah, that's Karen," one man muttered. "Last month, she said my dog was too loud because he barked twice while I was bringing in groceries." Another woman added, "She's fined me for wind chimes, for my garden hose being left out, even for leaving a kid's bike in the driveway. She acts like she owns this place." And then came the whisper that made me pause. "She used to be the HOA president, got voted out 2 years ago. Ever since then, she's been worse." Suddenly it all made sense. She wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was a dethroned queen, desperate to cling to power she no longer had. And Muffin? He was just the excuse she needed to strike. The confrontation, the first direct face-off, came one Saturday morning. I was in the yard, trimming hedges, while Muffin sat lazily in the window, blinking at the sunshine. Karen marched over, HOA handbook tucked under her arm like a holy book. "You need to do something about your cat," she snapped, without so much as a greeting. I raised an eyebrow. "My cat? He hasn't left the house all week." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't lie. I saw him. He roams at night. He scratches fences. He's a menace." I wanted to laugh, but the venom in her tone made my stomach turn. "He's on camera 24/7. He doesn't roam." Karen's lips twitched into that infamous smirk. "We'll see what the HOA says." And with that, she spun on her heel and stormed off. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about Muffin. This was a personal crusade. The escalating notes. Over the next 2 weeks, the notes became relentless. Sometimes printed on official HOA letterhead, sometimes handwritten in sharp, angry strokes. Final warning. Your cat is a health hazard. Neighbors are complaining. Fines will follow. This is your last chance before legal action. Each one made my blood boil. But each one also told me something important. Karen was desperate. She wasn't getting the reaction she wanted. I wasn't bowing down, and that drove her insane. The neighborhood divide. Soon, it wasn't just me. Karen started talking to other neighbors about Muffin. At the mailbox, I overheard her whispering, "That cat scratches everything. He's violent. You should be careful." At the community park. "Did you know his cat has fleas? I heard it could spread to other pets." None of it was true, but repetition is a powerful weapon. A couple of neighbors began to avoid me. Others gave me sympathetic looks, whispering, "Sorry, Karen's been talking again." It was clear Karen wasn't just trying to get rid of my cat. She was trying to turn the neighborhood against me. The night incident. One night I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, when Muffin bolted upright. His ears twitched, eyes wide. I frowned. It was nearly midnight. Who would be outside? I checked my security cameras, and there she was, Karen. She was in my yard. In the glow of the motion lights, I saw her crouch near the fence, tossing small rocks toward the flower bed. Muffin, curious but too scared to approach, hissed from the window. Karen whipped out her phone, snapping photos as if she'd caught Muffin roaming. My fists clenched. This wasn't annoyance anymore. This was trespassing, stalking. And yet, I waited. Because if I called her out too soon, she'd play the victim. But if I let her dig her own hole, well, the cameras were rolling. Setting the trap. By the time animal control arrived at my door, I was ready. Karen thought she had won. She thought her stack of complaints and her fake evidence would be enough to take Muffin away. But what she didn't know was that I had been saving every recording, every note, every shred of proof. This wasn't just a defense anymore. This was the beginning of my counterattack. And as I watched her smirk behind the officers that morning, one thought burned in my mind. Karen wanted a war. Now, she was going to get one. The officers stepped into my yard with clipboards, their eyes scanning everything like detectives on a crime scene. Karen followed close behind, her heels clicking on the pavement, her voice already rising. "There! Look at those scratches on the fence. His cat did that." The officer bent down, inspecting the wood. "Ma'am, these look weathered." "Not fresh," Karen scoffed. "Well, of course, because he paints over them. He's hiding the evidence." I stayed quiet, fists clenched. I knew the game she was playing. Overwhelm them with accusations, flood them with nonsense until something stuck. Muffin sat inside the glass door, staring out with wide eyes, tail flicking. He had no idea his freedom was on the line. Karen's performance. Karen stormed from one side of the yard to the other, pointing at flower beds, fences, even my car. "See this dent? Cat. Those paw prints? Cat. That overturned planter? Definitely the cat." The younger officer frowned. "Are you sure, ma'am? These could be raccoons, even squirrels." Karen snapped back. "Don't question me. I've lived here for 15 years. I know when an animal is out of control. And this cat..." She jabbed a finger toward Muffin, who yawned behind the glass, "is a danger to all of us." The absurdity would have been funny if it wasn't so serious. The officers turned to me. "Sir," the older officer said, "do you allow your cat outside, unsupervised?" "No," I replied firmly. "He's strictly indoors. I've got cameras covering every corner of this yard. Muffin doesn't leave this property." Karen laughed bitterly. "He's lying." I've seen the cat at night, prowling through yards, scaring dogs. I've got neighbors who'll back me up. I pulled my phone from my pocket. Actually, I think it's time you saw the truth. The evidence. The officers exchanged a glance. Do you have proof? Oh, yes, I said, opening the security app. The first video played, Muffin curled on the couch, sleeping. Timestamp, midnight. The second, Muffin batting at a feather toy indoors. Timestamp, 2 a.m. The third, Muffin sitting in the window, watching the street. Timestamp, 3 a.m. Every video, every angle showed the same thing. My cat never left the house. Karen's smirk faltered, but she wasn't done. That doesn't prove anything. He could slip out when cameras miss it. That's when I played the clip. The bombshell. On the screen, under the glow of the motion light, was Karen herself. She crept along my fence, tossing small rocks into my yard. Muffin hissed from the window, tail puffed, clearly terrified. Karen snapped photos with her phone, angling them to look like Muffin was outside. The footage caught everything: her face, her hands, her little performance. The officers froze, staring at the video. One of them muttered, "Is that you, ma'am?" Karen stammered, her voice cracking. That isn't what it looks like. He faked that." I kept my tone calm. The footage is time-stamped, directly from my security system. I can provide the raw files, the shift. For the first time since this war began, the power shifted. Karen's arms crossed, her face flushed red, but her confidence evaporated. The older officer turned to her. "Ma'am, filing false reports is a serious issue. We don't take kindly to wasted resources." The younger officer added, "And trespassing on private property, that's another matter entirely." Karen's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. This is harassment against me. He set me up." But the officers weren't listening anymore. They were writing notes, their eyes cold, their tone professional. Karen's meltdown. "Finally," Karen snapped. "You people never listen. I'm the only one trying to keep this neighborhood safe. If you don't do something about that cat, then I will." Her voice cracked into a scream. Neighbors peeked from windows, some even stepping outside. Phones came out, recording. For the first time, Karen wasn't the accuser. She was the spectacle, and everyone was watching. Cliffhanger to next chapter. The officers finally turned back to me. "Sir, we'll be filing a report. Not on your cat, but on the false claims made against you." Karen froze, her face pale, her smirk gone. Muffin, oblivious to the chaos, pawed at the window, as if asking when breakfast would be served. And me? I finally felt the tide turning, but I also knew this wasn't the end. Karen had lost a battle today, but she wasn't the type to surrender quietly. This war was far from over. The twist, Karen exposed. For a few seconds, the entire street stood still. Karen's shrill voice had echoed across the cul-de-sac, drawing neighbors from their porches, phones raised, eyes wide. The two animal control officers stood in my yard, stiff as statues, their clipboards now weapons of authority. Karen, red-faced and trembling, kept pointing at Muffin in the window, as if sheer force of will could turn him into the monster she'd invented. But the evidence was undeniable. The neighbors arrive. "Is everything okay?" Mrs. Wilson from across the street called out, her little dog tucked under her arm. Karen spun toward her like a cornered animal. "No, it's not okay. His cat is terrorizing us all. You've seen it. You must have seen it." Mrs. Wilson frowned. "I've never even seen his cat outside." Eva whispers, rippled through the small crowd gathering at the sidewalk. A few chuckles, some skeptical headshakes. The narrative Karen had been spinning for weeks was unraveling, and fast. The officers take control. "Ma'am," the older officer said, his voice hardening. "This video evidence clearly shows you trespassing and attempting to fabricate complaints. That is not only a violation of HOA guidelines, but also potentially a criminal matter." Karen's eyes darted between the officers and the neighbors filming her. The smirk she wore like armor was gone, replaced by pure panic. "You don't understand," she sputtered. "He doctored those videos. He's out to get me." The younger officer crossed his arms. "Ma'am, the footage matches the timeline of your reports exactly. Unless you can explain why you were in his yard at midnight throwing rocks, we have nothing further to discuss." Karen's last attempt. Karen's voice cracked. "This neighborhood is falling apart because no one follows the rules. I'm the only one who cares. I'm the only one keeping this place safe." But instead of applause, her words were met with silence. Then a voice from the crowd. Mr. Lee, the quiet man who rarely spoke at meetings. "You fined me $300 for leaving my recycling bin out overnight," he said calmly. "I never forgot that." Another voice joined in. "You tried to ban my kid's lemonade stand. And you reported me for planting tulips instead of roses." The floodgates opened. One by one, neighbors stepped forward, listing grievances, each story like a nail in Karen's coffin. The collapse. Karen's hands shook as she realized the tide had turned. For years she had ruled the neighborhood through intimidation, filing petty complaints, using the HOA as her sword. But now the mask was gone, and everyone could see the truth. "Enough," the officer said sharply. "We'll be filing a report about these false claims. And ma'am, if you continue this behavior, there will be legal consequences." Karen staggered back, her voice dropping to a hoarse whisper. "You're all against me. Every single one of you." Then, like a scene from a bad play, she clutched her papers, turned, and stormed off toward her house, slamming her door so hard the windows rattled. The relief, for the first time in weeks, I felt the tension in my chest loosen. Muffin, safe behind the glass, pawed at the window, blissfully unaware of the storm he'd just survived. The officers turned to me, their tones softer now. "Sir, thank you for cooperating. Keep those recordings safe. If she tries this again, you'll have what you need." I nodded, grateful. "Believe me, I'm not deleting a single second." The neighborhood's shift. As the officers left, neighbors lingered. A few approached me, their voices low, almost apologetic. "Sorry we didn't speak up sooner," Mrs. Wilson said. "Karen has made everyone so scared of getting fined. Most of us just kept quiet." Mr. Lee gave a small smile. "But I think we're all done being quiet now." The group nodded, murmuring agreement. It was as if a spell had been broken. The invisible grip Karen had on the neighborhood was gone, shattered in one very public meltdown. The twist in my favor that night, as I replayed the footage, I realized something bigger had happened. Karen hadn't just failed to get my cat taken away. She had exposed herself. Every note, every false report, every whisper campaign. Now it was clear to everyone that she was the problem, not Muffin. And the best part? The HOA itself couldn't ignore it anymore. Too many witnesses, too much evidence. For years, people had suffered under Karen's bullying. But now, she had handed me the weapon to take her down. Cliffhanger to final chapter. As Muffin purred beside me, I couldn't shake the feeling this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to lick her wounds quietly, but for the first time, the neighborhood wasn't afraid of her anymore. And if she came for me again, she wouldn't just face me, she'd face everyone. The final showdown. The next HOA meeting was unlike any we'd had before. Normally they were dry, dragged-out affairs, with Karen seated front and center, gavel in hand, dictating fines like a queen, handing out punishments. But this time, the air was different. Neighbors filled every chair, some even standing in the back. Phones buzzed as people whispered about the meltdown that had gone viral on the neighborhood group chat. Karen had become a spectacle, and for once, nobody was afraid to say it. The meeting begins. The HOA president, Mr. Thompson, cleared his throat. He was usually timid, but tonight, his voice carried weight. Before we begin regular business, we need to address a serious matter. Multiple residents have brought forward complaints regarding misconduct by a board member. All eyes turned toward Karen. She sat rigid, clutching a stack of papers like they were a shield. Her face was pale, her jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles twitching. "This is harassment," she snapped before anyone else could speak. "These are lies spread by people who don't care about rules or safety." But this time, nobody flinched. "The evidence." Mr. Thompson gestured toward me. "Sir, would you please share your evidence?" I stood, plugging my phone into the projector. The room filled with grainy footage of Karen creeping into my yard at midnight, hurling rocks at my window and scribbling notes. Gasps echoed through the hall. Then came the daytime clips. Karen crouching by my porch, slipping folded paper under my mat, glancing over her shoulder like a thief. When the final video played, Karen lunging toward my cat with a broom, the room erupted in outrage. "Unbelievable! She's dangerous! Enough is enough!" Karen's voice broke through the noise. "That's taken out of context. You're all twisting the truth." But no one believed her anymore. The neighbors speak. One by one, residents stood and voiced their own stories. She fined me $200 for planting the wrong flowers. She tried to ban my kids from riding bikes on the sidewalk. She reported my husband for parking his truck in our own driveway. Each testimony added weight, until Karen's desk looked less like a place of power and more like a defendant's bench. Karen's last stand. Finally, Karen rose to her feet, slamming her papers onto the table. "You're all ungrateful," she screamed. "I've given my life to this neighborhood. Without me, this place would fall apart. You need me." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, Mrs. Wilson said calmly, "No, Karen, we needed peace, and you took that from us." The words hit harder than any shout. Karen's shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked small. The verdict. Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses. "The board has reviewed the evidence. Effective immediately, Karen is removed from her position on the HOA. Additionally, we will be forwarding the footage to local authorities to determine if further action is necessary." The room burst into applause. Not polite clapping, but thunderous, cathartic cheering. Years of fear and frustration poured out in that sound. Karen's face turned crimson. She gathered her papers with shaking hands, muttering under her breath. Then she stormed out, slamming the double doors so hard they rattled on their hinges. This time, nobody followed her. The aftermath. When the noise died down, Mr. Thompson looked at me. "Thank you for standing up. It took courage, and it gave the rest of us the push we needed. I nodded, relief washing over me. For the first time since I'd moved into this neighborhood, I felt safe, truly safe. Outside, neighbors approached me, some shaking my hand, others smiling wide. Muffin had become a local hero overnight, a symbol of resistance against Karen's reign of terror. A new beginning. That evening, I sat on my porch with Muffin curled in my lap. The sunset painted the sky orange and pink, and for once there was no shadow of dread across my lawn. Karen's blinds were shut tight across the street, but I didn't care. Her power was gone, her grip on the neighborhood broken. Muffin purred, stretching lazily. I chuckled, scratching behind his ears. "You don't even know what you started, do you?" I whispered. The funny thing was, it wasn't really about the cat. It never had been. It was about control, fear, and the one person willing to say no. And in the end, that was all it took to bring Karen down. Final closure. As the stars came out, I realized something. Karen would probably try to claw her way back, to spin a new story, to find another target. But this time, she wouldn't succeed, because now the neighborhood wasn't afraid of her anymore. And neither was I. For the first time in years, the street felt like a community again. And all it took was one determined cat and one neighbor who refused to stay silent.